Welcome to class Soulmate. So in today's class, we're going to be drafting the blouse you saw on the thumbnail. Here I have my paper folded into two because it's an asymmetric design. So I'm going to be marking my bust line, my waistline, and my hip line. Okay, that is the vertical measurements that we need, and I'll marking them across this way: the bust, the under bust, the waist, and the hip line. You take your own measurements the way it's okay. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my neck depth of 3 inches and the width of 3 inches. Then I'm going to be marking my shoulder divided by 2, which is 7.5 for me. I'm going to drop the shoulder down by 1.5 inches, and I'll be connecting it from the neck point, that is the 3 inches neck width. All right, so once I have that, I'm also going to draw out my neckline this way. Okay, this is just the basic measurement. Now from the bust line, I'll come up by 1.5 inches to get my armhole depth. Right, the depth of the armhole, come up by 1.5 inches, or you divide your bust by 6 plus 1.5. Okay, so I'm going to connect on a straight line from the shoulder line this way. All right, now the next thing I'll do is to divide my armhole into two. I will go in by 0.5 like so. Right, then I'll measure my bust circumference, divide by 4, bust divide by 4, and that is where I'll be connecting the armhole curve to. Right, just watch the way I'll connect it to the measurement I just took. Now this is the armhole. All right, so we're making progress. Now the next thing is to get our dart line, that is our nipple to nipple measurement. Bust span divide by 2, and I'll connecting it this way. We're measuring from the center front, and I'll connect it on a straight line down to the hip line. This is where our dart intake is going to happen. Okay, now at the under bust, I'm going to take 1.5 inches on this left hand side and 0.75 inches on the other hand side. Right, we are working with bust of 38 inches. I'll do the same thing on the hip line. Okay, and I'll be curving it like this towards the bust point. You can see the way I placed it towards the bust point. You place your curve this way, and also the other parts you place it this way and curve. All right, now the leg, I'm going to connect it on a straight line down to the hip line as we marked. 1.5 inches, 0.75 inches for bust of 38 or 39 inches. Okay, now I'm going to be connecting to the armhole to form an armhole princess dart. I'll connect it this way. Right, then I'm going to come down by 1 inch to tighten the armhole. 1 inch. You can also do 1.5 inches and it is just okay. I'll still connect it this way. Okay, so the 1 inch that I use for tightening, I'm going to extend it up so that when you're joining the two pieces together, you're not going to have shortage. All right, now this is where my new armhole curve is going to be, the new 1 inch that we just marked up. Okay, at the bust line, I'm going to also divide my bust into 4 and mark, and this is it. Right, the same thing I marked at the armhole, and I'm going to be connecting it this way. Now at the under bust, I'll take my under bust circumference, divide it by 4, and whatever I have, I'll mark it. Then I'll measure the dart intake and add it up so we don't have any shortage. Okay, I'll repeat the same thing on the waistline. So after which I'm going to be connecting it this way to match up the lines. Okay, the same thing will happen on the waistline. Divide by 4, then add the dart intake. Okay, I'll also do the same thing on the hip line. Only make sure that you have your actual measurements, your normal measurement, fitted measurements. I hope you understand. Now, if this video is making sense to you, why not pause it and subscribe to this channel and keep on watching while you also share to your friends and soulmates and family people and everyone that you know. Okay, so let's continue with our tutorial on how to draft this beautiful blouse you saw on the thumbnail. Okay, so I'll connect the lines together from the waist to the hip line. I'm going to use my cuff to do this. Okay, I'm going to use my cuff to do this so that because it's a blouse, it's not supposed to be, the lower part is not supposed to be fitted around the hip line. It needs to have some freeness, and that's why I need to use the cuff so that I can add a bit of freeness to it. So this is what we have for our front. Then we're going to take our bust start from the bust line, come down by the difference between the back half length and front half length, and then connect it to the bust point like this. This is where taking actual measurements, accurate measurements comes in. If you do not know how to take your accurate measurements, the link to the video is in the description. So like I said, it's an asymmetric, and this is what we have. We need to open it up to draw our lines. Okay, so making sure that all the lines match up. This is it. Now we're going to draw the asymmetric. On this part where the asymmetric is going to be on the shoulder line, I'll come in by 2 inches, right? Then I'll measure the depth of the neckline. I use 7 inches. If you want it deeper, you can go deeper, and I'll be connecting it this way. I used the curve because I wanted it to have some curve. However you want it, you can just draw it. If it's a straight line, if it's a curvy line, however you want it, just draw your lines. Now on this other part, I'm starting from the neck point, right? I'm starting from the actual neck point, no minus, because it's going to be a bit high on that side. All right, so I'll be connecting my lines towards the armhole, and I need to close the dart to draw the lines. Also note that you can cut this out before drawing your lines. Now the depth of the cape, I'm going to be measuring how much I want it, about 3.5 inches from the neck point, right? And I'll be also connecting it 1 inch down from the actual part that I marked where the cape is going to cut across, or the depth of the neckline. Just follow the illustration the way it is and you're going to understand it. Okay, I'm using a pencil so that after getting the markings, I can now use my marker to mark it. So for proper markings, I need to close the dart so that once I finish cutting out, everything will match up. I hope you understand. So once I get the accurate measurements, I'm now going to use my marker to connect it. Like I said before, if you need to get accurate markings, you need to close up that in order to mark the right lines. And if you can't do this, cut the pieces out, then put them together and connect your lines. It will still give you exactly, in fact, more accurate measurements and lines that will match up after sewing. I hope you understand. Okay, like I was saying, if you do not have the accurate measurements, the link is in the description. So I'm using my marker now to connect the lines in order for it to show properly. You can see what I was trying to do. This is it. Okay, so now we're working on the lower parts. I'll close the dots so that I can mark accurate lines. So the dots that we marked, we're going to close it up and then draw our lines. You can see that the lower part of the blouse is asymmetric also, right? And the lines are not even. A part of it went inside. So I'm going to close the two dot lines and then draw my line. Now from the waistline, I will come down by 4 inches Okay, I'm coming down by 4 inches. On the lower part, I'll go in by 2 inches, or depending on how open you want it, 2 inches. Then I'll use my curve to curve it so that after joining, this part is going to have an opening as we see in the video, in the picture rather. Okay, as we see in the picture, it's going to have an opening. So this is how you're going to go about it, and after which you're going to curve it to blend it properly, blend it into the side of the design, into the side of the blouse. So I'm going to use my curve to blend it in, make it have a rounded hemline. I hope this video is making sense to you. If it is actually making sense to you, why not hit the subscription button, turn on the notification, and we'll continue to see on a regular basis when I upload new videos on daily or 2 days maximum. Okay, so I'm connecting the lines like I said, curving it to make sure it's rounded. Now after that, I'm going to use my marker to make sure that it is visible to all of us. Okay, so this is what you have to do in order to get this shape. Now the next thing I will want you to do is that before cutting out or while cutting out, you need to give some notches so that when you transfer to your fabric, it will not be difficult for you to identify where to put together and where to stop the measurement or the sewing. Okay, remember that this other part you're going to stop 4 inches below the waistline. You're going to stop joining. So this is all we have for the front. We're still going to trace out our um, collar. And now at the lower part, I realized that I took a wrong measurement for the hip circumference, right? The hip circumference, I did not add the hip pad that will be under the skirt, and this is getting to the hip line, so I need to add the measurement for the hip pad, right? So that is what I want to do now, so that when I wear the hip pad, it's not going to be too tight. I hope you understand. Okay, so if you've taken your accurate measurements, no need of redoing this. I just need to add that extra measurement for the hip line, since the blouse is getting to the hip line. Okay, so this is just an addition, and I'll make sure I blend up with the new measurements that I have using my curve to make sure I have the accurate design that I have in mind. Okay, so we're making progress. Let's go over to the back. Now the back draft is just our basic back draft, and of course the paper is folded into two because the back neckline is also going to be an asymmetric, and the zip is not on the straight line. Okay, so I'll use the nipple to nipple measurement to get my dart line for the back, and I'll be taking ½ inch on both sides at the waistline, right? ½ inch on both sides at the waistline, and I'll be connecting it like so towards the armhole line. Now the front armhole and the back armhole are on the same line, just that the back armhole drop down is 1 inch while the front is 1.5 inches. All right, now on the waistline at the CB, I'm going to go in by 0.75. This is to make sure that the zipper does not bulge, right? So I'll connect to the 0.75 and connect towards the hip line also. This will tighten the center back to avoid zip bulge. Now my measurement is going to be starting after the line that we just drew, right? So our bust divide by 4. I'm going to be marking it here. Our waistline, first of all, want to mark the hip line divide by 4 also, and I'm going to be marking it. Now at the waistline, the measurement is starting from after the 0.75, and I'll divide by 4 and mark, and then add the dart intake of 1 inch, and then I'll add it up. So once that is done, we are going to be connecting the lines together like so. Remember that at the hip line we use the curve, and that is the curve that I'm also using here. Okay, so this is our back measurement, our back draft. I'm going to be curving the armhole the same way we curve the front parts, right? So once this is done, we'll open it up and then do other alterations. So the back and front is put together for the asymmetric design. We've drawn the part for the front. We're going to make sure that the shoulder lines are matching up, okay? Where the front starts is where the back is supposed to start. No one should be wider or shorter than the other. So make sure it starts from the same line on both sides. Okay, so once it starts, you can now do whatever you like, whatever design you want for the back. Remember that we're following a design which somehow you may want to do other alterations. So just understand the principle behind it and you're good to go. So once I mark that, now remember that the front and back asymmetric is on the left hand side. So you need to make sure that whatever you're doing is going to be reflecting on the left hand side. So my neck depth is going to be on the armhole line. That is where I want it to be. And I'll be connecting it this way to the shoulder points of the right hand side, as you can see. Now I'm using my pencil. Now I'll go down by 1 inch, which is where I want the cape to be. So I'll mark where I want the cape to, how much the wideness I want the cape to be, and connect. Okay, so I'll connect the lines. As usual, you need to close your dart lines that cut across whatever you're marking so that you get accurate markings. Or better still, you can decide to cut everything out, put the papers together, and then mark the design that you want. And that will be the best thing to do, but this is the easiest to do if you want to get everything at once before cutting. Okay, so I'm using my marker to highlight it so that all of us can see it. Now this is a cape, but it's not going to be cut out on this paper. We're going to trace it out because we're still going to sew our normal um do our normal sewing before attaching the cape. All right, so for this part also, I'm also going to draw my lines as we did for the front. Right, as we did for the front, I'm going to be drawing the lines, and you can choose to draw it any way that you want. Okay, so after doing this, I'll have to use my hand to get the measurements. Now where I extended this is how I want the cape, not that is where my shoulder line is going to start. Shoulder line is still going to start where it's supposed to start, but the cape is going to extend wider than the shoulder line. I hope this makes sense to you who is watching this video. If it actually makes sense, why not subscribe to this channel? Why not watch other interesting videos that you may like? So I'm tracing them out. Okay, I placed the paper underneath to trace it out. Now once you trace out, make sure you do some marking so that you remember where the shoulder is and where the sides are. So this is for the back. You can see how I placed the cape, how it's going to come out, and the center is going to be cut out as the neckline. The same thing is what we're going to do to the front. Okay, so we're now going to cut our normal cuttings, cut everything normally. Now for this dart, you can decide to sew this dart this way, but I'm going to be putting it towards the armhole now. Now for the back, placing it towards the armhole as armhole princess that we're not going to be doing any tightening because it's at the back, so just connect the line which serves as our exit line. Okay, all we have to do is just to cut it out, place on our fabric, cut and add seam allowance. That's all for the back. Okay, so cut every other part. Now this is where our zipper is going to be, not at the center line. I'm using one of the darts which is dates for the zipper line. Okay, remember that this is going to be on the left hand side. The asymmetric design is going to be on the left hand side. So like I said, this is my zipper line and I need to mark it out. So I'll be adding zipper allowance here and fix the zipper there. Okay, so this is for the back, and for the front, like I said, we're going to cut out the same way. I just want to show us here that we can do our normal cuttings out, then put the papers together again to mark out our cape line. Even though we've marked it out before, I just want to show us, right? So it's still the same thing that we are doing. Now for this other part, I'm going to make the cape more visible, right? I didn't make it visible in the first part, so I'm using my hand to draw it out well the way I want it to be. Okay, so that's exactly however you want the cape to be. You just have to draw it out and then trace it on another paper, and before cutting other things that you need to cut. So I hope so far you've enjoyed watching this tutorial. I hope you're going to practice it. I hope you've learned one or two things from it. Placing paper underneath to trace it out. I hope that you're going to also watch the sewing part of it. Now the fabric we're placing under is to make sure that the tracing lines show properly at the back of the paper. Okay, that's the reason for it. So like I was saying, I hope you're going to come back for more tutorials. I hope you watch previous videos. We're going to do the sewing tutorial and the skirt also. I'm adding another design to the skirt, which I'm going to be showing us how the skirt is. All of this and many more we're going to be enjoying on this channel as often as possible, and I know that you are ready for it. Okay, I have paid classes also if you are interested, and also physical classes if you are a beginner. We have so much to learn together, and I hope to see you as you do great in your journey to fashion designing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to be seeing you in our next video. Okay, so once we trace out, we are going to label, do some marking so that it will be easy for us to identify and cut on our fabric. So the cape we're going to be putting front and back together before cutting on the fabric. Okay, so thank you so much for being here with me, and I'll see you in the next video. While we complete what we started, this is how it's gonna be. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's cut on the fabric.